our postmodern age of division, anger, anxiety, and confusion, the most dangerous weapon you have is your own mind.
Take control! Question everything!
This is the Intellectual Freedom Podcast.
Why are the smartest people in the room usually the most useless? And why do the most talented people often turn into the most dangerous villains? Plato has the answer, and we're going to uncover this mystery today. We started with this question in book 5 in the last podcast, and of course, as usual, like a good reality TV show, Netflix series, or telenovela, we were left hanging until today. But before we get there, welcome back to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. I'm Dr. David Hopkins, your host and guide. I am a humanities professor, and we are deep in the Republic now. We're past the halfway point. Oh, and before I get too far, I just need to recognize something that I've noticed since getting into Plato and the Republic. First off, and I watch these. I don't spend a lot of time on them. I mean, this is free. I don't have advertisers. I do this because I love it. And as well, since the pandemic, I've been doing this, and I've been seeing these podcasts, and I enjoy it. But hey, the number of listeners and watchers on the YouTube channel of the Intellectual Freedom Podcast up like 900% since the new year. Just wow. Thank you. And I just have to say that this particular city, Hamburg, Germany, Hesse, Germany, is the city where I have the most viewers on the planet Earth. And see, for me as a humanities professor in the United States, that just sort of still blows my mind that my most downloaded city is in Germany. So, hey, if you are listening in from Germany, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for listening. Maybe someday I can get over there. That would be pretty neat to meet some of you as just really, really a cool thing. I appreciate you guys. But something else I noticed in just scanning the numbers is Los Angeles, second most downloaded city in America. Then across the state of Iowa, I add those together as third. I have a bunch of downloads there too. That would make sense for me as I was born and raised there, have a bunch of family, even though I've lived down in Florida for a long time. But, you know, as I survey who and where people listen from, something that I see does my heart good. From progressive and liberal LA to conservative Midwest, I get listeners from both sides of the political aisle. And when I started this podcast, there was that was actually incredibly important to me. So very important, actually, that I connect regardless of your political affiliations or leanings and just consider different ideas and opinions. It's just something near and dear to my heart. As, to be blunt, I despise the political extremes in this country. I find it destructive. I find it very divisive. I find it not healthy, and by no means does it help us get better as a society, or heck, even for the mental and physical health of me or you or anyone trapped in one of those bubbles. So whoever you are, whatever your preferred political persuasion, I'm glad you're here. And yeah, I'm sure whether you are left, right, or center, there's times, and there probably has been times, I might tick you off a little bit, but you know, it's good. It's all good. Sometimes we need to challenge each other. Still hold the conversation, though. But again, thank you from LA to Iowa to Hamburg, Germany, and all parts in between. I am so glad you're here. So truly glad. Okay, that's enough of the fluff. Back to it. So you know that in the last episode, book 5, Socrates dropped, holy cow, just a number of nuclear bombs in the conversation. He told us there will never be peace on earth, never an end to human suffering until philosophers become kings, until the people with the wisdom also have the power. It's quite a bomb. Socrates drops, and he knew it. Now the concept might sound good from a theoretical standpoint. It might even sound great on a bumper sticker. Let the smart people rule. But let's be real. When you think of a philosopher, when you think of a modern academic or an intellectual egghead type, do you think leader? Do you think king? Do you think president? Well, I work in higher education, and even I'm thinking to myself, oh, that's just a train wreck waiting to happen. No offense to my colleagues out there. I mean, come on. We know the stereotype. Those professors, more than a little socially awkward, maybe can't change a flat tire, live in an ivory tower, have zero common sense. They should rule? Yeah, right. In Book 6, Plato addresses this head on. Because even back then, Glaucon, Adeimantus, they're a little bit indignant about this whole thing. Because immediately after Socrates says philosophers must rule, his friends stop him and say, Socrates, are you kidding? Around Athens, the philosophers we know are either useless weirdos who look at the stars all day, or they're dangerous, corrupt villains. You want these guys to run the country? And Socrates looks at them and says, you're absolutely right. And really in Book 6, we're going to find out why Socrates first proposes this in the first place. But heck, then basically says, but yeah, in practice, maybe this just can't work. But in this claim, and then almost refuting the claim, it introduces something that for those of us right now living in a democracy, or at least the shadows of what a democracy is supposed to look like, we need to answer this question. Why does democracy hate expertise? And why does the best soil grow the worst weeds? We're going to get back to the best soil versus weeds metaphor. But first, Socrates gives us possibly one of the most famous images in political history to answer this question. Why does democracy hate experts, hate the philosopher king, hate the intellect? So let's get into it. It's called the Ship of Fools. And, just the quick recap. Book 5, the 3 waves. We established that in the ideal city, the philosopher must be king. Then Adeimantus, the practical brother, says no, they're actually useless, and point scored for Adeimantus, in my opinion. So wait, okay. Let me give you just one man's perspective. How often have we seen the most brilliant minds leave the ivory tower, come out into the real world, and actually meaningfully make societal changes in politics? Can you name one? I'm not sure I can. I struggle to come up with any ever. I'm sure there's some out there that and do in maybe minor ways or rise to some level in politics, but let's say it's incredibly rare, and let's say I don't think we have ever had a truly intellectual president here in the United States in practice. But our friend Socrates accepts the challenge of Adeimantus, and he says, I need to tell you a story and to explain why the true pilot, the true intellect, is never actually given the wheel. And this is where that ship of fools analogy begins. So visualize this. Imagine yourself a massive, massive ship at sea. The ship represents the state, the government. On this ship, of course, there is an owner. And Plato calls him the ship owner. He's big, he's strong, maybe a little deaf, can't see very well. And most importantly, he knows absolutely nothing about sailing whatsoever. He is, for all intensive purposes, the money man. He can't sail, but he damn sure can scratch checks to buy a boat. He has the power. He owns the ship, but he has no expertise. Yes, I know. We have all kinds of experts across social media that claim to know exactly the strategy of the Dems over the Republicans, or Donald Trump, or Xi Jinping, from their mom's basement in a Discord server, aghast. Only they've been able to figure out this whole thing. But let's be real and honest, you and I, the regular people, us, we don't have access or the expertise to, quote unquote, understand how all the machinations of the system work, because we're not in it. And quite frankly, if we did know, we would probably be shocked and stunned. But anyway, that's the owner. He's got the money, just doesn't have the know-how. Then you have the crew. These are the politicians, the crew of the ship. They're constantly fighting each other, wrestling for control over the steering wheel. They beg the owner to give them the wheel. They will use anything. They'll use flattery, give him wine, drug him with speeches, tell him how wonderful he is. They'll lie, cheat, steal, overpromise, basically whatever it takes to win favor of the owner to grab power. And if begging doesn't work, they'll throw the other crew members overboard. All's fair in love and politics, right? They claim probably to justify being the dirty cockroaches that so many of them become, that quote unquote sailing isn't a teachable skill. They claim sailing is just the art of seizing power. Kind of the old adage you'll hear these politicians say sometimes when they're doing a law. We love sausage, but we wouldn't want to watch it being made. So those are our friends, the crew. And then there's this third figure, the true pilot. Usually doesn't hang around with everybody else. Isn't fighting for the wheel, looking out over the horizon of the ocean, studying the stars, the winds, the seasons. He's doing the actual math required to navigate across an immense ocean. But because he is looking at the stars and not down at the politics, the crew often make fun of him. The stargazer, useless babbler, minimize or hate or shame or whatever it takes to bring the focus back to the politicians. As Socrates says, quote, they don't understand that the true pilot must give his attention to the seasons, the heavens, the stars, the winds, if he really is to be fit to captain a ship. And here's the translation. This is the tragedy of democracy. The person who is best at getting power is usually the worst at using it. Why? Because getting power requires flattery. It requires drugging the ship owner, aka the voters. It requires playing a dirty game of power with donors and special interest groups and using the tactics of promises and fear. The true pilot, the true expert, he's not into playing those games. He's too busy studying the truth. He's not interested in the sideshow as he sees it for what it is, a circus, screaming at false flags, oversimplifying complex issues into 15-second sound bites. So the adult in the room, according to Socrates, is ignored, doesn't resonate with the average voter. Today, to be calm, cool, collected, balanced, comes across as boring. I know many people say, oh no, if I had my way, I would want the really boring, controlled, one who will tell me exactly the way it is and not what I want to hear. People say that sometimes. But check out who wins elections. Look at our Congress. Look at our House of Representatives. Look at our Senate leaders. Look at our president. What type of personality type rises to the top of the heap? I won't beat a dead horse here, as you know, who generally wins and what gets the bases of either Team Red or Team Blue fired up. It isn't the calm, cool, collected one, unfortunately. Now, before we get to the ship, I need to define a term for you. You've probably heard it thrown around on the internet, but I want to make sure we really understand it because it is the scientific name for what Plato is describing. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. I'm sure many of you have heard it. And if you haven't, though, I want to throw you out a real simple definition. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where incompetent people are too incompetent to realize they are incompetent. Say it one more time. The cognitive bias where incompetent people are too incompetent to realize they're incompetent. Basically, if you're bad at something, logic, humor, sailing a ship, you lack the very skills required to know that you are bad at it. So you walk around with this blissful, unearned confidence of how smart and great you are, thinking you are an expert. You know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, your candidate is obviously way better than those idiots voting for the other party. But the Dunning-Kruger effect comes from a psychological study done in 1999 by an individual, David Dunning and Justin Kruger at Cornell University. And the story is absolutely wild, actually pretty darn funny when you think about it. So these two individuals were inspired. They were inspired by a news story about a man named MacArthur Wheeler. In 1995, Mr. Wheeler robbed two banks in broad daylight. He didn't wear a mask, smiled at the security cameras. Well, as you can imagine, when the police caught up to him, which only took about an hour, he was genuinely shocked that they were able to find him. And he stared at the surveillance tape and mumbled, but I wore the juice. I wore the juice. And as it turns out, Wheeler believed that since lemon juice can be used as invisible ink, you know, the little kid game, I think we all kind of did that when we were kids once, rubbing lemon juice on he thought, anyway, that rubbing lemon juice on his face would make his face invisible to the cameras. Now, he wasn't crazy. He wasn't on drugs. They tested him out. He was just deeply, confidently wrong. Dunning and Kruger realized that wasn't just him. That's all of us. So they continued on and they ran some tests on logic and grammar and humor. And what they found was really startling. They found that the people who scored in the bottom 12% on these various categories, after being asked where they felt they were, each of the people who scored in the bottom 12% category consistently estimated that they were in the top 60%. So, why this matters for Plato? This is exactly the dynamic on the ship of state. The crew for MacArthur Wheeler, they're incompetent, but they're loud and they're confident and they think they know how to sail, but they don't know enough about sailing to know how hard it actually is. The true pilot knows exactly how hard it is to gauge the winds, to gauge the seasons, to gauge the waves, to gauge the weather. So he stays quiet and he stays humble. And in democracy, who do we vote for? We vote for the guy that rubs lemon juice on his face and thinks he's invisible. Socrates is just basically telling us this, that the reason philosophers seem useless isn't because they do not know how to sail, it's because you won't give them the wheel. Let me pause, soak that in. The reason philosophers seem useless isn't because they don't know how to sail, it's because you won't give them the wheel. Now, on the one hand, I see some validity in the argument. I definitely do, but I have some huge obvious misgivings to this. And I bet as you listen, you aren't buying this either. So let's return to it. Give Socrates some additional room to flesh out the rest of his story. So part 2, Socrates goes deeper. Adeimantus said philosophers are either useless or they're wicked. So why do so many brilliant people become evil? Why do many talented politicians become the worst dictators? And Socrates, Adeimantus, so often he brings up great questions, and Socrates says, the best soil sadly grows the worst weeds. Think about it. If you have a weak, mediocre soul, can't do much harm. You don't have energy to be a supervillain. You're probably just going through life, A to B to C, work, family, retirement, die. But if you have a gold soul, you're charismatic, you're brilliant, you're courageous, you're driven, you're ambitious, and you're strong. But then you get corrupted, you become a monster. Great crimes are very rarely committed by mediocre people. They are committed by geniuses, evil geniuses that just went wrong. But we can't stop there, because really then we have to ask, but what in the world then would corrupt them? Is it bad parents, bad teachers? Did their mama not hug them as a child? Did they suck at sports and get bullied? I don't know. Socrates says, no. It's the public. He calls the public the greatest evil. He calls the public, actually, the words, the great beast. Imagine a young, brilliant man standing up in Athens, or heck, Twitter today, whatever. He speaks a hard truth. The beast, the crowd, boos. They attack him. They cancel him. Call him a racist, misogynist, fascist bastard. So, wow, the guy's knocked off his feet. It's like, wow, I thought that through a long time. I went through all the complexities. Being smart, intellectually astute, geez, he pivots. It's like, whoa, I don't want any of that. He changed tacks. He's a smart guy. Articulate, flatters them, tells them what they want to hear. And guess what? Voila. Cheers. He's now a charismatic people person, just like us, but smart. Come on. We know how this works. Tune into the hardcore cable news channels. Wait till after 6 p.m. in America to really get a good flavor of it. And listen as the ghouls come out on their microphones. They know and they deliver exactly the message that their audience wants to hear. Every time. They get paid the big bucks, so they do it. The beast cheers. They give him likes. They give him votes. Gives TV, radio, social influencers, followers, and lots of love that equals lots of money. Eventually, the brilliant young man learns to feed the beast. Stop seeking truth. Start seeking the applause. This is exactly what we call, in modern times, audience capture in the influencer culture. You see brilliant thinkers start a YouTube channel or a podcast. They start out honest, but the algorithm rewards them for being extreme, rewards them for being angry, and slowly they drift. They become caricatures of themselves. The gold soul becomes a sophist. Socrates warns us it's incredibly hard to remain a philosopher in a society that rewards clowns. So, if the philosopher refuses to look at the beast, what is he looking at? The crew looks at the owner. The politicians look at the pole. What did the philosopher look at? Socrates says he looks at the good, but this is abstract. So Socrates gives us two diagrams. He gives a sun analogy. He says this, what makes vision possible? You have the eye, which is the tool, and you have the tree, which is the object that you see. But if it's pitch black, you can't see. You need a third thing. You need the sun. The sun gives light. He says the intellectual world is the same way. You have the mind, which is your tool. You have the idea, which is the object. But you actually see the truth. You need a third thing. And he called it the good. This means truth is objective. You don't invent it. You see it. Just like you don't invent the tree, you need the sun to see it. Then he draws a line. He cuts reality into 4 levels. This is the hierarchy of being awake. So level 1 on the bottom is imagination. This is the world of shadows, of reflections and images. This is TikTok in modern equivalency. This is believing a meme is reality. You aren't looking at the thing. You are looking at a picture of the thing. Then you have another level down. It's called belief. And this is the world of physical objects and facts. The modern equivalent, this is news, or it's supposed to be news. You know what happened, but you don't know why. You trust your eyes, but you don't understand the causes. So that's the second level. The third level is the world of math and science. You use hypotheses, you make formulations, you draw conclusions. You're getting closer to the abstract truth in the third level of thought. But then you hit level 4. And for Socrates, this is considered the top level, the highest level. It is the level of understanding. This is pure philosophy. This is a true pilot. You grasp the why. You see the forms. You see the truth. You safely navigate. Not just looking at the shadow of it, not just having little snippets of news, not just having some ideas, but having the full grasp. Socrates then, after explaining these levels, looks at Glaucon and realizes, look, we're just getting too abstract here. The sun and the divided line, they're so hard to visualize. What does all of this mean? And he needs a metaphor that explains the painful journey that a human being, you and I, take to go from level 1 in the shadows to level 4 into the truth. And he needs to explain what it feels like to wake up. And this is where he sets the stage for book number 7. And he says this. Imagine human beings living in an underground den. And next episode, we are going to explore the allegory of the cave. It is the most famous passage in Western philosophy. to help you mature intellectually. It's my favorite book in the entire Republic. It's one of my favorite chapters I've ever read. And I can't wait to get there. That's from this one book. Get the allegory of the cave. And the whole thing we talk about in book 6. It falls in line. And if you get and you live out and you understand the allegory of the cage, I can promise you this: after next week, you're never going to look at your phone, your TV, your culture, your friends, or politics the same way ever again. I'm Dr. David Hopkins. So to end the story we've been discussing today, don't be a ship owner. Don't be the crew. Look at the stars. I'll see you in the next episode.